Hello everyone, and welcome back. In the same vein as the co-op brain that we did a while back, we're going to do some sort of speed play difference brain. I don't know really how to define this. I had a conversation with one of my commenters recently who said he was interested in how to move into a more speed play environment from more casual play. Comments on screen if you'd like to read the full information, but basically he was saying, how do I get faster at playing missions? So I decided to have my buddy run the normal deep dive from last week, and then I ran it as well without watching his footage or anything. We used the same general build, but I wanted to highlight some of our exceptional differences in our gameplay. We're going to be jumping through this very quickly so that we're not watching two entire deep dives. That would be an hour and a half of video, so we're going to go through this pretty quickly. So first of all, he pops and fights the normal Dread outright. Pretty simple. This is what a lot of people will do, I believe. He gets a nice phase skip and kills the Dread pretty quickly. After this, he goes off and gathers some nitro for a little bit, gets about 60, and then moves on to fight the Hive Guard. Now keep in mind there's a black box as the second primary in this stage of the deep dive. But before he can get to that, he does run into some ammo issues and ends up having to scrounge up a bit of nitro to be able to finish off the Hive Guard. This is a tough spot, and I understand the strategy that he's trying to execute here. Ideally, you don't want to resupply on the first stage of a deep dive. So either you'll leave it behind and it'll be wasted, or you'll take it when you're basically at full ammo and it'll be wasted likewise. Regardless, once he gets his drop down, he finishes off the Hive Guard, does the black box, and moves on to the next stage. Now the three critical factors we're going to be comparing these two runs by is ammo between stages, nitro between stages, and time per stage. So now let's see how I tackle the first stage. The first thing that I want to do is take out the black box. It is the only stationary objective that takes a lot of time. Whenever I get close to completing the black box, I go ahead and pop the nearby Dread, and I fight it while I'm in the area. This is a little bit of a risky maneuver, but since it has 3, it's not too much of an actual threat. That, and if you weren't aware, if you actually fail a black box in a deep dive, it doesn't actually fail, it'll let you start it again. Once the black box is complete, I kite the Dread around for a little bit while I'm collecting resources. This allows me to get free Bosco damage in while I'm looking for nitro. My main goal is to find 80 nitro before I leave the first stage, and at this point we've done that. So now I'm just going to finish off the Hive Guard. Now ammo is tight here, so I'm going to have to make some very smart plays. Taking out all the sentinels and breaking the armor flaps as satchel charges are almost essential to get through this. Much like my buddy, I don't have any axes left after the first dreadnought, so I'm going to have to take him out with normal EPC shots, thin containment field blasts, and freezing and doing melee attacks at worst. We're going to be relying on the cryo and drills to get rid of sentinels from this point forward, so we can blast the remaining armor flap faces with our satchel charges. Executing all of this perfectly, we managed to get through the first stage just barely without having to resupply. I do one last quick scan of the area around the drop pod, don't find any nitro, so we move on to the next stage. So, to compare ourselves right now, he resupplied in the first stage and lost 1 brick of it. He has full ammo, very little nitro, and he's at 18 minutes. I have almost no ammo, 137 nitro, and I'm at 7 minutes. The time save here is largely attributed to me not having to stall the Hive Guard to resupply, and me fighting the Dread while doing the black box. Now, in the second stage, we're going back to his perspective here. This stage is much more clean from both of us, so there's really not much to say. He pulls his first egg and gets his swarm, and while he's fighting his swarm, he's getting his Morkite. Not much improvement that can be had here. As the swarm is winding down, he pulls his second egg, gathers up some more Morkite while he's fighting the ambient spawns, gets the last of the Morkite, pulls his third egg, gathers up a little bit more nitra, and pulls his fourth and final egg, and immediately presses the button to get out rather than sticking around to fight all the bugs that are coming after him. I can't really see this stage being executed any better. And from my perspective, I immediately resupply when I get into this stage. This is going to give me an advantage moving into stage 3. I immediately resupply to fight out the stage. And then our progression through the stage goes largely the same. I pull the egg immediately in front of me, get my swarm, mine Morkite, mine the other eggs. Basically, it's all the same. I'm being very liberal with my use of ammo in this stage, as I have a resupply available to me that I can be able to take before I leave. And once I get the rest of my Morkite available, I find the egg that I blasted out of the wall, and I go get my fourth and final egg as well. Now, there's a little bit of difference at the end here, is I go back and gather my resupply, and then head to the drop pod, and I still get there before Molly arrives. This allows me to go into stage 3 with full ammo. So at the end of stage 2, he's sitting at half ammo, 178 nitra, I'm at full ammo, 178 nitra, and I'm about 13 minutes ahead, which is about the same amount of time as we left the first stage with. Getting started on the third stage from his point of view, this is relatively uneventful as well. However, he unfortunately has to resupply right at the beginning since he's already at half ammo. This is where my advantage comes into play in that I came into this stage with full ammo. As far as the refuel goes, it's very easy. All of the oil shale is right next to the dozer, and neither of us really struggle with it at all. He gets his refuel done in good time, pulls his egg, and then follows the dozer and fights off the swarm. On this difficulty, it's not too overwhelming to fight a drill dozer swarm as well as an egg swarm at the same time. However, he neglects to pull his second egg and goes ahead and starts the Heartstone. This isn't a bad play by any means, it's definitely a safe strat to pick up the egg on the way to the pod. However, I perform this stage a little bit differently. So he gets his Heartstone on the mule, goes back, gets his second egg, puts it in Molly, and immediately presses the button. Due to this, he won't have to fight the swarm that comes from that egg, gets to the drop pod, no problems. Now, like I said, my execution of this stage is a little bit different. I don't have to resupply right at the beginning. However, my drill dozer trip is just about as mundane. Unfortunately, I have a bulk detonator spawn, so that forces me to expend all of my impact axes. I probably could have done it with other ammunition types, but I decided to be greedy and get him out of the way. I have a little bit more lingering pressure on me because of the bulk detonator, so it takes me a bit longer to get started on the refuel than I would have liked. But once I get started, it's smooth sailing. I cut oil off the wall and just vacuum it up out of the pits. And in almost the exact same strategy, I grabbed the egg immediately after I finished the refuel. It's much easier, especially as a cryo driller, to defend Doretta while she's moving, as once you freeze the bug, Doretta gets further from them every moment. However, this is where my play starts to deviate a little bit. I realize that the second egg was behind me, and I actually go back and get it while we're still on the way to the Heartstone. As soon as we get to the Heartstone, I drop 2 resupplies instead of 1, as I didn't have to drop one in the starting room, and I press the button right away. Now, this is where I do encounter a little bit more pressure due to the fact that I pulled that second egg, and I do end up losing a plate due to some heavy rock pressure as well as a lot of grunts and Praetorians. But overall, nothing lost, only 1 plate, and we got through it just fine. And this allows me to press the button immediately after I put the Heartstone in, rather than having to run back for my second egg. Very small time save, but it adds up. And now for a few more numbers to really break down exactly what happened at what stages. So on stage 1, he finished with a time of 18 minutes and 22 seconds, where I finished at a time of 7 minutes and 33 seconds. Largely, I would attribute this time difference to me fighting the Dreadnought while doing the black box and him having to scrounge for Nitro while fighting the Hive Guard. This is the only large time discrepancy in the entire run, as both the other stages are only a couple of minutes in difference. However, I wanted to draw your attention to the Nitra and ammo levels when we're switching stages, as we touched on before. He moved to the second stage with 15 Nitra in the bank, having already dropped one resupply, but on the other hand, he also had full ammo and was ready to take on stage 2. I entered the second stage with close to no ammo and 137 Nitra in the bank. Of course, I didn't drop a resupply in the first stage, and I instead resupplied immediately in the second. Stage 2 took him 7 minutes and 47 seconds, and he left it with 178 Nitra. Stage 2 took me 5 minutes and 27 seconds, and I left it also, hilariously, with 178 Nitra. However, the critical difference here is that he left with half ammo due to not having a resupply on the ground in the second stage, and he made the correct decision in my opinion to not drop one. That way, in an awful situation, even if he did have to drop that resupply and spawn, if things got really bad, he could have gone back to get it. But due to me dropping that resupply in the second stage, I was able to exit stage 2 with that same amount of Nitra and full ammo. And as far as stage 3 goes, it took him 15 minutes and 18 seconds, which is very respectable for a one-stop escort as a solo driller, and it took me 13 minutes and 58 seconds. So, like I said, the only really huge time discrepancy was stage 1, just due to the difficulties that he encountered. I think overall, though, this gives a decent case study into the thought process of stacking objectives on top of each other and how to do things more efficiently. The best thing you can do is always be one step ahead of yourself, and understanding when it's time to stop doing something that's unproductive. For example, I measured out exactly how much Nitra I was going to need to complete the dive as I was going along, and I didn't waste any time getting extra Nitra. It's very easy to end these deep dives with hundreds of Nitra in the bank that you'll never be able to use, but at the end of the day I finished this deep dive with 23 in the bank. So I wasn't wanting for Nitra, and I didn't waste time mining it. This can be applied to normal missions as well, but obviously you want to be a little bit more careful with that. Overall though, I hope this has given you a little bit more insight into how to do things a little bit more quickly and efficiently. And by no means is this a cookie cutter template that you should go off of. Just because you see a dread in a black box doesn't mean you should do them at the same time. But just kind of think outside of the box a little bit and see if you can push yourself to a situation where you might not have thought you'd be comfortable. If you'd like to see some more Deep Rock Galactic content, make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to catch me live, I stream over on Twitch. If you'd like to talk to me or any of my community members, you can find us over on Discord. And as always, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.